Today, I'm happy to be joined by Kristian Jørgensen of GoElephant. Welcome to Assembly Line, Kristian.
Good to be here, Scott.
I'm really looking forward to chatting with you more about your path. I know you've been in the ecosystem a long time. You've been a consultant. You were founder and group leader of an architect group. I believe you wrote a handbook on Salesforce implementation. You lead your own webinar podcast series on Salesforce as well. Been an author at Salesforce Ben, but of course, what we're going to be discussing today is your latest and greatest project, GoElephant, for adoption intelligence for Salesforce.
Sounds good. You got it right.
So maybe we could just start with how you kind of got into the ecosystem and how that eventually led to the idea for GoElephant.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I got started was as, I guess, an accidental business operations person who became part of this CRM implementation. And we called it something else, but it was Salesforce. So it was, uh, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that. And I was on the business side doing business analytics. So supporting the business in understanding how it's going so they could make better decisions. Um, and then I worked at another company that was implementing Salesforce, Hollister, an American medtech company. Um, and then I went to the dark side of consulting and was more on the delivery side and had a ton of fun there. So it was from the client side, if you will, in those terms, the first couple of years before I even got to see setup and all of that good stuff. Yeah.
Fun. So, okay, tell us about GoElephant. What problem specifically is the application solving, and who are you targeting,
Yeah.
and so on?
So it is quite a bombastic problem and space that we're attacking because it's not particular to any one kind of industry. It's more about as a company grows or is of a particular size, they start to encounter this problem of not being able to know how their users actually feel about using the tool that is supposed to help them do their job, right? That is essentially what Salesforce is, at least for like sales and service people. It's supposed to be a productivity enhancement tool, and then there's a bunch of other stuff Salesforce does too, right? And that is something I saw firsthand, both when I was implementing and using Salesforce, but also in consulting. A lot of times, if there hadn't been enough attention paid to the user experience or tracking user adoption, how the business is actually using Salesforce, eventually it kind of fades out, and there is this scary myth or re-implementation that are notorious, not just for Salesforce, but for IT projects in general. Um, so it's really that problem of lack of insight into how is the system actually used and how does the organization feel about using all the different processes that they can use Salesforce for.
Yeah. I think that's a common thing that anyone who's dabbled in the dark side like yourself in consulting has seen issues where there weren't enough stakeholder representation of the actual end users. And so it was only, folks in the C-suite handing down requirements from on high. And then when it comes time for go live, it's crickets because the end users don't like it, or it doesn't actually meet their needs or their workflow or what have you. So I know even in small customizations to Salesforce, it's a problem to get adoption. So it makes sense that you step back and you got to. Salesforce itself is obviously a big investment, right? So people want to make sure that they're getting adoption at a high level of the tool in general.
Absolutely right, because what else are we getting from this big investment? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so sounds like a pretty horizontal product. Are you specifically targeting an individual customer profile or persona or a specific industry that you've seen, pop up in a lot of prospects?
So it's more on the type of person or role within the company. And this is something we've learned over the last 2 years of working with GoElephant and customers. And that is the magic formula for getting value from GoElephant is that you have someone who is more on the, let's say, product management side. So a Salesforce product owner or business application owner. There are many different names for people who have that responsibility. But then also someone who is responsible for change management or enablement or adoption. They're also called different things, but essentially they're driving the enablement, and they really care about that what they do will have the biggest impact. So they need the visibility to see, okay, what teams and users are struggling, have low adoption, or are not satisfied. And that's a key thing that we provide alongside also the feedback on the different processes, which can feed into, okay, what continuous improvement efforts should we prioritize? Because one thing is there are so many ideas of new capabilities we could do, but let's make sure the existing ones are well received.
Hmm. Makes sense. So, okay, so you've learned that you need to find like an internal champion, right? At these companies to be advocating for GoElephant and the product. How have you and the team been going about finding these champions? I mean, you mentioned yourself that they go by a lot of different names, so I would imagine it's a little bit difficult to just run a LinkedIn filter on one specific job title.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it you're zooming forward to the present, which I get. But if it's okay, I'd like to talk a bit about how we actually went about starting
Sure,
GoElephant. Yeah.
that'd be great.
Um, so you mentioned I was writing the book, the Salesforce End-to-End Implementation Handbook, and I like to put in different tips on different tools that companies could use at different stages of their journey, like DevOps tools or adoption tracking tools. But when I got there, I could only find Salesforce Labs adoption dashboards,
Hmm.
which I think is fine for like a local team or a smaller company. Um, but it doesn't really hit the nail for enterprise companies or mid-sized companies where they need a little bit more intelligence around adoption. So that's where the seed was planted. Um, and I'm a big fan of product management and the principles in there. So that's how we went about it. So we didn't start with build. We started with a survey, the state of adoption survey. That was a LinkedIn post and invited different people to participate in it. So that was the first sort of early validation that, okay, companies do believe adoption is important, of course, but very few feel Salesforce is well adopted across teams in their organization. And they don't feel they have a good tool for measuring the level of adoption. So that was the bits that got us started. And then I did, I don't know, 20 or 30 interviews after that with mainly product owners, but also some change managers. And that's how the hypothesis that, okay, it is these people that care most and desperately need a tool to focus their efforts.
Wow, I love so, I've talked to a lot of different founders, and that is, I think, the ideal path. You have an idea, you don't just pick up your keyboard and start clacking away to build you before you validate it and have some customer interviews or some prospect interviews. But honestly, very few actually have the patience to do it. And the so I applaud that you guys actually took the time to make sure that it was a real problem in the space, and one that folks are willing to pay for to fix. So you said you went through 30 different interviews with folks?
Yeah. And through that progression, we went from just asking broad, open questions. Um, and then in the second interviews to show ugly mocks of, okay, we've established that it's a problem with this lack of visibility into adoption across the organization. Then I showed an ugly spreadsheet with different teams and some scores, so they could see, okay, these teams in your organization have low, these have high adoption. Would this be helpful compared to what you have now with, okay, these users have not logged in the last 30 days? How helpful is that, right? Um, and yeah, so that's how we got started before we even started to build anything. But obviously, that feedback on the ugly mocks drove what would become the MVP, the early version of GoElephant.
Very cool. And these early interviews, were you how were you positioning yourselves when you would request these meetings? I mean, were at this point it sounds like you didn't even have mock-ups then before on the first round of interviews. So you were just reaching out saying what, that you're interested in the space, or did you say that you're going to build something? Because I know some folks kind of shut down when they feel like this is a sales pitch, right?
Yeah. Um, I think so. What we did was in the survey that we did.
Mhm.
We at the end we left an email field if you'd like to receive the report. Put in your email field, and we'll send you the results. Um, so I did that, send it, and then I also said to the ones that had responded with the email, if you're interested, I'd love to pick your brain on this topic a bit more because we're thinking of potentially solving it. And this is next to my job, the full-time job I had at the time before starting GoElephant. Right, so this was a side investigative project, you could say, at the time.
Very cool.
And
You know, when you describe it like that, it doesn't sound like rocket science. But again, a lot of folks aren't doing this before they just immediately want to run to the lab and tinker, right? So it's good to have that kind of discipline. But you were going to say, I'm sorry.
No, no, I was just gonna say I get that fear that some people could have for, oh, will I be perceived as selling? But I think if you're genuine in that, okay, this is a problem that you see, you found some other people who feel the same problem because that's what the results validate.
Hmm.
They'd also want help solving it if it's a real problem for them that they haven't been able to solve before for whatever reason, right? So think if you just tell yourself, I'm doing this because eventually I want to help them overcome the problem they have. That takes away a lot of the resistance internally, but you have to tell yourself over and over. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not you're not pushing a clunker car like the stereotype of a used car salesman, right? If you're building something that they actually need or trying to actually offer value to them. So very cool. Okay, so you've had these customer interviews. You validated that's a real problem. How did you begin actually then building? You got the go ahead. I know you mentioned some ugly mock-ups, but now you've gotten the go ahead on kind of an early stage what the MVP is going to look like. How'd you move forward from there?
Yeah. And that was definitely uh, something tricky because at that point, you're finishing some of those interviews and you say, okay, we're thinking that we're gonna do something to solve this. Then you have to kind of keep them warm while you do the development phase, and you don't know when
Mm,
you're gonna be approved on the app exchange, and how will the first version actually behave when it's in a big org and not in a sandbox or testing org and all of that. So that was some interesting. Those were the biggest problems we had at the time. Now we're way past that, of course. Um, but yeah, so we were approved in 9 days from the security review. Uh,
wow.
and I remember this was end of June, uh, 2 years ago almost. Uh, and we expected it would be at least 4 or 6 weeks. So my co-founder, Tony, and myself, we were getting ready to go on a bit of a holiday because we knew there was going to be a lot of work ahead as soon as we got approved or if we didn't get approved. But we got approved. And then, okay, we had to rally up those companies that we had been talking to and say, hey, it's actually here now. Is anyone not on holiday? Because European summers and whatnot. Um, yeah. And then it just went from there. I think August or September, we had the first installation, and a couple months later, we had the first customers, and yeah, then it
Very
just
cool.
went from there.
But please don't tell me that this means you and your co-founder canceled your summer vacation because the security review came back so fast.
So we didn't cancel, but we probably worked a bit more than we were planning to, because it was a gift, right? That we could move our whatever timelines that we had set up forward. Yeah,
Cool.
and step
So
on the go to market. Yeah.
obviously a certain level of enterprise admins understandably don't want to or really even can't touch a managed package that hasn't gone through security review. But I'm curious, did you do any beta testing even prior to the official security review approval?
Not with customers, no. But what we did do was with the first few customers, we said, okay, we think we should go in a sandbox and see how the app it behaves. And we did get some learnings, and there were some things wrong, but it was in the sandbox environment, so it was okay. And we had a pretty close relationship with those early companies, and still do. So they were okay, and then we went back and fixed it, and then went to production. Yeah.
Nice. And are all these organizations, these early customers, and prospects, were they all originally folks that filled out that survey, that very first survey on LinkedIn? Is that how you came across them, or were they folks from your network?
Yes, one of them was, two of them weren't. They were from my network, you could say. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Okay. And so back then it's just you and your co-founder working on this. How could you give listeners a sense of the size of GoElephant today?
Yeah. So today we're past that early stage. So we have customers, enterprise customers with ranging from 900 to 2,000 plus users orgs. So pretty hefty size orgs. Um, We are still Tony and myself. We do have a PDO, that's a product development outsourcer, so a consultancy that specializes in App Exchange app development. We use them from time to time for if we need extra capacity on a special thing that we're doing. But other than that, it's all Tony. I have to say accolades to Tony for just killing it on the product development side. Yeah.
Nice. Big props to Tony then.
Yes.
That's very cool. I love companies like GoElephant too, where I don't. It feels like just a few years ago, being being smaller was seen as a weakness, but now it's like seen as a strength, right? That like how far can you go with keeping lean is actually more a flex these days. I would say so. I love hearing stories about companies that are accomplishing so much and servicing large organizations like you guys seem to be doing. Is your pricing by a flat fee for the org, or are you doing it per user pricing, or how are you managing that?
Yeah. So we have user tiers. So if you're below 100 users in the org, then it's one price, and then increments up to 1,000 and different buckets after that. Uh, Essentially, the price per user drops pretty fast as it goes up in volume. Our pricing is transparent. It's on our website, so you can input the number of users in the org, and it'll show what's the price for Pro and Premium. Yeah,
Gotcha. I love that, and that makes a lot of sense for a product like yours that with the value add increases exponentially as the org increases, right? So it makes sense to kind of peg it. Yeah, I know you mentioned that it's tiers, so it's kind of like bands rather than literally down to the exact user count, but essentially pegging it to the user count makes a lot of sense.
yeah. We and as all startups, we thought a lot about this and tweaked the model and so on. So it's the end of last year is when we implemented this to be effective January 1st. And then this is what we're going to market with. And yeah.
Did did you have any customers that when you were running these experiments you needed to change their pricing on?
That we needed to change the pricing.
Well, you said you kind of revamped this model as of 2026, right? So were there any folks you had to send an email out to notifying them of the pricing change, or are you just keeping them on your old legacy
Um,
pricing?
yeah, so our existing customers all go to premium, the premium subscription plan with the most comprehensive suite, where they also get process experience feedback now. And they will stay at their current pricing or go down if the new pricing model is lower than what they were paying before.
Oh,
Um,
so it's a
yeah,
win-win for them.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we love new customers, but we definitely cherish our first and early customers. So, yeah, I think the only thing we did was now that you ask, was we had one customer where they were like, okay, we'll do a quarterly contract to start because there
Hmm.
was some particular thing GoElephant couldn't do at the time. Um, Essentially, they weren't using the role hierarchy, and that is
Hmm.
something at the time GoElephant was using to show this is how adoption compares across your organization. But if you're not using the role hierarchy, then there's nothing to compare against. So we needed to make it possible to compare with other parameters. So we did that, and then they switched to the annual plan. Yeah.
Well, that can be honestly that can be a great a great thing on both sides because in the end the customer gets what they want, but also you get given explicit instructions for your roadmap, right? Of
Mhm.
if you do
Yeah.
this, then sign us up right away. So
Yeah.
that's a lot nicer than a prospect that goes silent and you never know why.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But of course that does happen from time to time. But okay, so very cool. So you've got your new pricing now in 2026. We talked earlier about kind of or started getting into lead gen, and now I'd like to revisit that. So what channels specifically would you say are working well for you? Are you still leveraging LinkedIn a lot to introduce folks to Go Elephant?
Yeah. So there are so many different channels, as they're called, that you could use. But when you're small and lean, you you have to double down. So yeah, we do outbound outreach, and then we do a little bit of sharing our thoughts on the market and thought leadership, as it's called, sharing our perspectives on different current events and how to get value from Salesforce investments and driving modern product management and adoption. Yeah.
Very cool. And so what? So you said you're engaging a lot of thought leadership. So are you um, jumping in and kind of name dropping Go Elephant where you can in these posts, or are you kind of staying silent and almost doing some more quiet selling of just letting folks know that you're an expert in this space, and hopefully then they'll see on your profile that you actually have an app, and because
Yeah.
it's a balancing act, right? I mean, you don't want to be straight up pitching all the time in your posts. I'm curious how you balance that.
Yeah. So I think it depends on what post it is, because if you're trying to share, let's say, some framework that you believe in or that you've invented or something, if the purpose of that is education or sharing knowledge, it shouldn't end with thanks for reading, now go buy my thing. Maybe there are different schools of thought on this, but I think it's important to separate that. And then every now and then you can be a bit more forward and say, hey, something new changed, or so many people are surprised when we say it's only 10 minutes to install GoElephant because all other digital adoption platforms take weeks or months to install. Here's the link, right? But then you're intentional and upfront about it. And I think integrity is really scarce these days. So as long as you are that, it's appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool, interesting. Okay, and you mentioned earlier how um, you did leverage at least for MVP a PDO, and you did spell out that's a product development outsourcer. But maybe if you wouldn't mind expanding a little bit on that relationship, because I think there are probably a lot of ISV founders out there that maybe could benefit from contracting with a PDO if they perhaps haven't been building on Salesforce as long as you have.
Yeah. Um, so it was an interesting experience in a good way. Meaning, so Tony, my co-founder, CTO, um, I don't know, 15 years in Salesforce, awesome developer and architect and technical reviewer of my book, and so he had super much experience. So the reason we engaged with the PDO was to have extra capacity. Tony architected, designed everything, but then we needed someone who also had that flair of, okay, what is special about App Exchange apps compared to a basic Salesforce app that you would do for sales or customer service. Um, and that's where we got a lot of value add from working with the PDO. Uh, but it was still Tony who did 96% of the work and architecting and designing. And even now, that's what he excels at.
Very cool. And I mean that makes a lot of sense. And kudos to you guys for having the humility to realize that even vast amounts of experience doesn't give you more than 24 hours in a day to work with. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
so, and it sounds like you and Tony, in the early days, GoElephant was a nights and weekends kind of thing, if I'm reading between the lines, right?
Yeah, it was because it was parallel from the survey and early customer interviews, product discovery, uh, to some angel stage fundraising. That was all in parallel with some other things we were doing before we went to full time. Um, and yeah, and then it's still sometimes an evenings and weekends project, but in addition to week during the day. Yeah,
hmm
at the moment.
So I didn't. I love hearing about this because more and more of your story, as you share more and more of your story, I get more and more interested. So I didn't realize that you had gone through an angel stage fundraising round. Um, could you share more about what that experience was like, and maybe even timelines, because some folks don't know when is the right time to go seek that, before or after MVP, before or after paying customers or beta testers, right? Maybe if you could frame it not just to the calendar, but also where things were in terms of the development of the application.
Yeah. Gosh, there's going to be a lot of it depends here, but hope that's okay. So we basically knew we had spoken uh, to people at big companies that said, okay, if you have something that works, we'll try it out, right?
hmm
Um, and I think the 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 higher up you get on the evidence scale of there is market interest or demand for something, um, the more intriguing that is to investors or angel investors, right? Um, I think if you can build it yourself in a short amount of time, uh, maybe then you don't need investors early on. So don't even worry about it, right? You can always try and get investments later once you get more proof. Um, yeah, it took us about 3 months from when we did the first outreach to network again. It all came from people we know. So we have five angel investors. Yeah.
Very cool. And did you? So you had kind of some buzz or some something you could point to, the survey as well as or the LinkedIn survey poll, as well as these customer interviews that you were doing, right? That you could point to in these meetings with possible
Yeah,
investors.
yeah, absolutely. And then a rough market sizing. Salesforce has 150,000 customers. They probably have to be of a certain size before they really experience a problem. At least, let's say, 200 Salesforce users. That's still 70,000 companies or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and how much do they experience a problem uh, translates into what it's worth for them to solve it. And yeah,
And did you have anything beyond the customer interviews? I'm curious if, some folks say the gold standard is like a letter of intent, but I don't know how common it is to get those these days. Something actually in writing.
we didn't. Maybe other companies do it differently. We didn't get there. No.
Yeah, cool. And what about the application itself? At this point, is it still the ugly mock-up stage, as you coined it earlier, or had you actually started building something?
At that stage, or how do you mean?
When you were meeting with possible investors, did you just have the idea of the application that you would build should they invest, or had you already started doing a
Yeah,
little bit of building that you could,
yeah,
almost do a vaporware demo?
yeah. Definitely, we didn't have a working application in Salesforce or anything like that. But we did have a little bit more refined mockup. Uh, and we hadn't started building yet, but definitely Tony was full on architecting and data modeling and how are we gonna come around whatever challenges we may face. So yeah.
Very cool. Okay. I want to turn to a topic that you've probably never heard about this before, but that's okay. We like to on this podcast we like to talk about new things and educate folks on topics they might not already be aware of, such as AI. I know you've never heard anything about that before, right, Christian?
That's adoption intelligence. Is that right?
When it comes to GoElephant, that's true. It would be adoption intelligence, wouldn't it? But I'm curious how, obviously Salesforce has been pushing so hard Agentforce. There's this kind of growing talk of more and more enterprises becoming agentic and perhaps physical headcount, either growing at a slower clip or perhaps even shrinking. Um, with an application, that's tied directly to headcount. I'm curious how you're envisioning GoElephant in the future. Personally, I think that um, although it sounds a little odd, whether it's a human or it's an agent, adoption is adoption, and it needs to, the Salesforce needs to be leveraged, whether it's by a human or an AI agent. Still important, but I'm curious if how you're envisioning helping folks see adoption beyond just an actual user.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I think the first thing is not to bucket AI or Agentforce into one big thing because it it can serve in various different use cases. So let's say number one, where there is no human in the loop at all. Let's say, and like Salesforce help on Agentforce there, right? It's only if the Agentforce for Salesforce help cannot help answer your questions that you are transferred to. I don't know if you're transferred to a human. Uh, Probably are, right? Uh,
Play
in that,
eventually.
yeah, in that case, if the agent force and AI has this human in the loop, right? Then you need great user adoption. Otherwise, it's a crappy customer experience if there is no one to be transferred to. That that that's one use case, right? The other is when AI is a summary of something or a recommendation of something, which is there are so many use cases for that, so many opportunities to improve users' experience in Salesforce with AI. So I'm a big fan of those. But to get value and return on investment on those AI investments, you need the users to be in Salesforce to have great user adoption and to trust whatever is coming out. So I think you won't have users going away 100% at least, maybe in 1,000 years, right? But I think in the near future, medium term, it's going to be humans with agents drive customer success together, which was Salesforce's original AI mantra, right?
Right. Right. Better together, I think, is definitely, hopefully the future we're marching toward. So, okay, now, GoElephant's got some traction, and you have early customers. You're on a great forward trajectory. I'm curious though, if you could share some advice with anyone, kind of in the early days, anyone who's still in their ugly mock-up
Hmm.
stage.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any major lessons that you and Tony learned that you could share with others before we wrap?
Yeah. I think when you think you've done enough early product discovery or user research, you're halfway there. Um, we could have done a ton more uh, and avoided some problems or known some things would be really important later on. Um, so we've rebuilt GoElephant a few times, even in those 2 years. So the core principle is still the same, but the number of things that we've changed and modified as we've learned from customers is pretty big. Um, so it's just shifting left also matters, of course, to early product discovery. Um, so when you think you've asked enough and asked enough people, double it. Yeah.
I love that. It is difficult, isn't it, to know, when there's a way to hide, whether you're hiding in the terminal and just working on the product and hiding from actually talking to customers, putting your baby out there and getting told that it has room for improvement. There's also, you can get into analysis paralysis, right, and be hiding in the customer interviews for so long that you never get anything done. So it can be difficult to know when you're ready to move
Yep.
forward. But I
Yep.
like this adage of just when you think you're just about there, double it and then you can move on.
Yeah. Maybe not entirely double, but you get the idea. And then
Yeah,
I think the other big thing is whatever feature set you think you need in your earliest version, beta version, MVP, whatever you call it, um, cut it in half or a third. Because what is the one thing you want to validate and learn with that version? And that's how you should look at it. You shouldn't think, okay, this is a version that's going to impress the whole world and get us tons of customers early. It's okay from the early beta testers companies. What is it specifically we want to learn and validate? Um, and when you ask it that way, okay, then all the other fancy UX and what have you can go away. You don't need it. Uh, we packed our MVP too much, even though that is something we had preached to the ecosystem in Salesforce programs in general. But yeah, what do they
it's
say
easy to
about the
do.
shoemaker and his shoes, right? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Um, the cobbler's children have no shoes, I think, on their feet,
that's
right?
it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, that's funny. That's good advice too. I appreciate you coming on today and sharing these words of wisdom. If anybody is dealing with an adoption issue in Salesforce, how can they get in touch with you or GoElephant to learn more?
yeah. So um, LinkedIn is where we hang out most, or go to goelephant.app and book a demo.
Awesome. Well, Christian, thank you so much for coming on. Best of luck to you and the GoElephant team, and we'll chat soon.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Scott.
Cheers.